Call of Duty 3 was released in 2006 and sold 7.2 million copies. Made by Treyarch, is the beginning of the rotating studio schedule that Activision had wanted for the franchise, a game every single year. And from the very beginning, it was planned to be a series by Infinity Ward. The tension could be seen to be brewing between Infinity Ward, Activision, and Treyarch that possibly could cause an eruption from within the franchise.
But first, Call of Duty has to go modern. This is the Call of Duty Retrospective Part 2.
Let's do this.
While Infinity Ward or any of the original creators have never actually made a statement on having to share their brand that they made before Activision even got involved, one could assume that they weren't really too happy, especially when the games that another company makes under your name aren't as good as yours, and they bring out the good name of the franchise. So there's this conflict that's just simmering in the background waiting to become relevant while Infinity Ward makes their newest Call of Duty game. And this one makes the great leap to the 21st century. So Call of Duty 4 is the first COD game to have a subtitle, Modern Warfare. And I only actually first played Modern Warfare about a couple years ago, probably 3 years ago. So finally Infinity Ward was able to make that modern game that they had wanted to. But of course, there were some caveats as well. Treyarch's game had to be a World War II game just in case Modern Warfare wasn't successful. Apparently, market research at the time said that people didn't want to play a game set in modern times. I guess that was kind of true, because then niche titles like Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon, and SOCOM would be made all the time. Unfortunately, they're not. Infinity Ward doubled their teams to 100 so that they could have two different teams, one working on single player, the other on multiplayer. And the final product kind of shows that tight attention. And Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare makes that really big jump from World War II combat to, well, modern combat. And it's clear that the World War II setting was holding Infinity Ward back, as this one is the most varied of their games at that time. Call of Duty 4 was released in 2006, but the story takes place in 2011, which actually would have made it future warfare at the time, but the actual combat is current to 2006. This game isn't really modern because we don't really fight that way anymore. We don't usually send troops out on the ground. It seems more and more these days that combat is going to be online and in the court of public opinion, but that's almost a completely different subject. Gameplay wise, right now, I'm having problems of thinking of how to make a review that's not so banal. I mean, what can I say about Modern Warfare that hasn't been said already? So for me, COD 4 is kind of really satisfy that itch that Tom Clancy's novels, movies, and games occupy. You know, that genre of military porn? 09er, blah, 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 whatever, move out, something like that, I don't know. Yada, yada, yada. It's just that. And it's very accurately portrayed, I would think so. Your friendly AI, they stack up against doors and stuff like that. But of course, these sequences are very scripted, so. But they do really do a lot to make this seem a lot more real, which is what the series was always built off of, realism. The gameplay in this one is pretty similar to that of the previous Call of Duties, except you've got new things due to the new modern setting. Weapons are more customized so that there's many different variations for most of the weapons. You got different sub-weapons now. You have, instead of a smoke grenade, you have a flashbang, which stuns enemies, but I actually personally would prefer a smoke grenade because it's more helpful when you're pinned down than a flashbang. But weapons, grenades can be picked up and thrown back with one button, which is amazing. Why did it even take 4 games to actually get this correct? I don't know. Your allies are a lot more helpful than in the past. They throw grenades back, which is pretty cool, and they save your butt a lot of times. If you don't move forward to trigger the invisible programming switches, then an infinite amount of dudes in balaclavas and people in foreign dresses just keep coming at you, and it just makes your life just hell. And this is where I differ with most people on this game. It's a great game and all, and looking at just any of the many reviews that have a hard-on for this game, even the usually cynical Yahtzee made a review one could see as positive for some reason. And when you talk to people about Modern Warfare, many people talk about how all gillied up in the AC-130s missions are their favorites, and maybe they might even talk about certain sequences of the game that are great, but they're just sequences. They're great and all. I don't want to diminish them at all, but these moments of like greatness are spread thinly like a 6-hour meat grinder. This trudge really feels arduous during parts where you play as American Sergeant Jackson. These parts just seem like Infinity Ward were just throwing all the bad guys that they can. I understand what they're going for though, but they want to keep people from playing the game in the most boring way possible, standing in one place and just shooting everything that comes your way. You have to keep moving so that you could stop the infinite soldier spawning. Problem is that the whole world seems to be booby-trapped. Move in any direction at times and you run into an exploding car, barrel, and grenade that rolls into your feet. Play any Call of Duty game, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like walk anywhere, boom, you explode, you're dead. Oh my gosh, it's so annoying. There's almost no warning or opportunity to get out of the way, and might seem like I'm making a big deal over something very small, but it really hindered my enjoyment in the flow of the entire game when you just die over and over and over again because for very stupid reasons. You don't want to make these games too easy, but when it becomes a meat grinder, it doesn't really into what makes Call of Duty games fun, and it's moving from set piece to set piece. It's very interesting because the biggest standout parts of the game for people are the parts that are not meat grinders. People always talk about all gillied up in the AC-130 mission and Nuke Scene as the greatest moments in gaming. It's very interesting because the standout parts of the game for people are the parts that are not meat grinders. And I guess they're great because the rest of the game is just kind of unremarkable. The Nuke Scene is great for me because it's probably the only moment in the newer COD games where the game doesn't tell you anything. You just experience the scene. It's a big shame since there are some great set pieces and the presentation is just phenomenal. The main score was made by the always excellent Harry Gregson Williams and really fits with the tone of the game. The rest of the soundtrack wasn't made by him though, but it's still pretty good. The most of the footage I have captured here is from the Modern Warfare Remastered version, which is kind of a misnomer to me. It's more of a remake where unless you are looking side by side, you wouldn't really notice the difference between the two other than the graphics. It's a shot-by-shot remake, basically. And I really used to think that the original Modern Warfare looked fine, but this remake really proved me wrong. It's so gorgeous.
Whoa, that's bloody outrageous, mate!
The original had this color palette of shades of brown and gray, but the colors here are just so much better. I really don't understand why a lot of games from the PS3, Xbox 360 era games had that colorlessness. I guess it's the graphics processors at the time, because the blacks are black, reds are red. It's so much better. And so many games at that time had it. I honestly don't understand why that happened. Little details like lasers from friendly forces that show up when using night vision goggles really harkens back to the series' focus on authenticity, and it really puts you in the immersion. You want immersion. That's what you want, right? Which kind of runs in contrast to the story, which kind of feels like a mix of those Tom Clancy-esque military porn movie books, games, and stuff, and one of those 80s Chuck Norris movies. I say that because most of the bad guys in those movies are either cartoonishly evil Russians or cartoonishly evil Middle Easterns, and this game has both. And it kind of highlights the problem of games set in the modern day. The whole, why are we doing this? Call of Duty kind of gets blamed for promoting American jingoism, but I feel like that previous titles did pretty well walk the line of war is bad through the bleak war quotes that show up when you die, and that oh so subtle detail of having each soldier have a name. So the series has always tried to balance this and, well, the video game empowerment fantasy that comes with being a regenerating, super accurate super soldier. Not too many people talk about this, but having random allies having names really makes me sad when they die, at least least for me. But the first Modern Warfare makes the whole war bad, blind nationalism bad, a much more explicit affair. Kind of have to contextualize this game also to when it was made during the Iraq-Afghanistan war, where public opinion was at probably its lowest, was on a downturn towards that war. So it kind of makes sense why in this war you're thinking, why are we even fighting in this? I mean, then again, there is this element of, oh, we got to save the world, guys. But I mean, there is this element of like, why is America? Why did America invade? Why did America invade this nondescript Middle Eastern country? I mean, yeah, there was a coup, and yeah, some really shady guys took over. But I mean, what makes America not shady guys for just like invading this random country and for no reason? I mean, you do find out that there are nukes involved, but I mean, and I guess it's justified for that. But it's never really made explicit that they invaded for looking for these nukes, which, I mean, I guess that's what we did in Iraq, right? Right, guys? We were looking for weapons of mass destruction, and this is when we actually find them, and they actually do something, but, I mean, I might be like over analyzing something that many people might see as a stupid plot, but I mean, I think that they're actually trying to say something with this. It's a little bit more evident with Modern Warfare 2, which is actually an even stupider plot, but that's this video and another video. Modern Warfare doesn't really do this well with the who, what, where, and how. So something that the Call of Duty franchise has been doing is giving exposition info in the loading screens. Though they aren't the only ones to do so. Like everyone else in Modern Warfare though, it's been injected with steroids. For me, the plot was very confusing. Go to make a sandwich during one of these screens and you come back just asking why? What are we doing? What's going on? I don't know. Though in this game and World at War, the plot is somewhat simple to follow. Well, simple compared to the rest of the series, I would say. The thing is with Modern Warfare, it's clear that the series was moving into the direction of a complete package. Once you were done with the single player, you weren't really done. You had intel to collect, which unlocks cheats, which feels so much like a throwback these days. It's really disappointing. More games don't do this. You could also play the game faster, harder, and better with the arcade mode and, of course, you know, multiplayer. It was the beginning of the trend of games wanting to be the only game that you need to play. You got your single player, multiplayer, all uniquely singular, separate, you know, like your plate at your family reunion. You keep your mashed potatoes away from your peas. Infinity Ward was definitely ahead of the curve with this game making the first major contribution to the grim brown modern military shooter. I personally wouldn't credit specifically Modern Warfare for creating this genre, and rather just industry trends, which seems to be a theme with the franchise. Modern Warfare sold 15.7 million copies, a huge leap from Call of Duty 3's 7.2 million copies. Call of Duty became a mainstream success, which is remarkable because it was only released on the newest generation Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. Not everyone made the transition over to new gen. I hadn't at the time, mainly because
PlayStation 3 will retail for $599 US, $599 US, $599 US, $599 US.
It's just pretty remarkable because Halo 3 had just launched 2 months earlier. The modern gamble had actually paid off. Thing is, Treyarch was already halfway through development of their game, a game where the world was at war.